with infinite light on purpose. And so really now the question goes, not why did Hashem make the world klal and prat? Why didn't Hashem just start? It's the original question. Why didn't Hashem just start with all the pratim and not bring out infinite light to begin with? He could have skipped that whole process and created just all the pratim, and we would have been fine. Yeah? Okay, you have a question? You get it. Okay, fine. Let's just review it one more time in this footnote 30 to make sure we have it. The Rebbe himself sort of restates this in different language from a mimer of the Rebbe Rashab. And he says, if you look at footnote 30, he says, Lama hayagilu techila b'chinas ein sof. Why did he first reveal the ein sof? Sheyahat tzimtzum. So then only afterward there would be a tzimtzum, v'acher kach hamshachas hakav. And after from the tzimtzum, he would draw down this finite light of the kav, right? B'koach ha'ein sof. It's well within the power of God. Yechol yos b'techila hamshachas hakav. He could have just brought right from himself a finite light. He didn't have to bring an infinite light, contract it, and then bring a finite light back. He could have started off creation with a light which is mida v'gavul, with limited measure and limitation. Fine. Going on to Vav. You following? All right, you guys are a little bit sleepy here. Okay, a little smile. It's good. All right, Vav. Acha inyanhu. Let's try and answer this question. You have a mimer? There's no more mimerim? Acha inyanhu. This is important stuff now. In order to complete the true intention of creation, why did Hashem create the world in the first place? Let's not forget. He wants a dir b'tachtonim. And how is that supposed to come about? Through the work of the creation, through their work becoming batul to elokus, right? We're basically supposed to nullify ourselves in one of two ways. You can either batul yourself, be a bitul hayesh or a bitul b'metzias. You remember what these things are from the previous classes? Bitul hayesh means you conform your behaviors, even your thoughts, to doing what you don't want to do, to doing Hashem's ways, and you basically force yourself into being this sort of mishkan of Hashem. You walk in the right ways, whether you like it or not. And in a higher level, if you really complete this job, it's like kind of like a Beinani. You can even go to a deeper level where your mamash, even your inner world and your inner mind and everything is mamash given over to Hashem like Avram Avinu. You're like a true chariot of God. So you're walking around this finite world, making a space essentially for God's, not only his ways, but his very being to be flowing through you. This is the purpose of creation to begin with. He wanted himself to have a home here, which means the creation has to be batul to elokus. So, Haisa Bria, Ba'ofen Kazeh, therefore, he had to make the creation in such a way, Shagam Kodem Avoda Yiyeh Ba'nivroim, that even before we start our work to sort of chisel away at our feeling of self and open up a place for Hashem, before we do the work, there should be in the creation Ke'ein Hachana, something like a preparation, like a hachshara, like a koshering, a preparedness, a readiness, lehabitul, for that negation, shifalu avodasam, that we would be able to eventually affect through our service. In other words, the world had to basically have already the inborn ability to reach the level of bittul before we even set out on the task to arrive at such a level. In other words, like if you're going to try and say, I want to bring the world, the chachma of Chassidus into Ruvi, right? One thing Ruvi is going to need in order to get this job done is a human brain. If he has a human brain, we're not saying he's born with a human brain and this brain is already wrapped up Chassidus and he's going to be having the thoughts of God flowing through those brain. He has to work on that. But if he doesn't have a human brain, as long as it's going to work, like try to give Chassidus to a cat, right? You have all the bittul of Elokus, but the creation that's trying to become bittul doesn't have it's not kosher, it's not prepared to experience such a bittul. And therefore, the whole world in this sense had to be a vessel which was able to experience the bittul of Elokus if they're going to go set out on this task of trying to nullifying themselves to God. L'chein, and therefore, that's why Hashem created the world in such a way, That he first created the world out of a pool of infinite light. In other words, he intentionally made an infinite light and then took the world out from that space, which we just said was seemingly unnecessary. Now we're showing why it is necessary. Because what was his intention for the world? That it should reach a level of bittul l'mayla min ha'olamos. So if it didn't start out being cut from the cloth of infinity, no matter how much you're going to teach Chassidus to a cat, it never would have reached such a place. It had to basically have the ingrained ability to find God inside of itself, and therefore it had to be brought out of an infinite place in its very origin. Mimenu dafka, from infinity itself, nimshacha or shlefi erech ha'olamos, and therefore he had to first reveal Or Ein Sof, the ocean of light, and then draw a little drop of godliness out of that original ocean. We said this will unfortunately create a problem, which he has to now invent klal and prat and go through a whole process, but it was necessary. A second ago we asked, why was such a thing necessary? He could have just created the world as it was. What would have been the problem? No matter how hard the world would have worked on itself, it never would have been able to taste infinity, because it never would have known what infinity was. It would have been something implicitly other than infinity, because Hashem made it without ever having it be inside of an infinite place. And therefore, it can only ever reach to its own peak, which would have been basically the origin of those details. It would have never been able to find something higher and deeper than itself. It never would have been able to find infinity if it didn't come from infinity in its origin. And this is why he did it. Now the world is actually prepared. If it will work in itself, if you'll teach Chassidus to it, it can find its origin, which means it can contain inside of itself its true source, which is something higher than the world. So Hashem designed the world to be able, l'chatchila, to contain something higher than the world.
Even the man.
What's that?
Even man.
Man's also part of the world.
He also has this infinite part in him.
What, right? Why? How do you know? Why does he have it? Because his whole existence was taken out of infinity to begin with. So he started inside of infinity. You're talking about the man, Adam Kadmon, the little man and the big man, right? They have the ability to find infinity inside of them because they started off not as a man. They started off as a drop of water in an infinite ocean, indistinguishable from that ocean. And therefore, even when you take them out and they become something wholly other than that ocean, if they dig deep enough, they can find infinity inside of themselves, which is the ultimate goal of creation. Hashem wants something above man to dwell inside of man. It could never have happened unless he's created it like that to begin with.
In order to find infinite aspect of oneself, it has to be expressed a sense of individuality, which is I guess why originally the drop of the water in the ocean was taken out. There's that level of individuality. Otherwise,
you can't have a dira b'tachtonim unless you have a tachtonim also. Yeah. So you need a dira, which means it has to come from infinity, but it has to be taken out of infinity, so it's a tachtonim. And then you want to mix them together.
What's dira if you translate it?
Dwelling place. Okay, so that's pretty deep stuff. Yuvan zeh, going on to the second paragraph in Vav. Is everyone following this, David? Yuvan zeh behektim. We can understand this by prefacing Masha Amrazal. That what the sages taught us. That Tamal zeh shebriya sa'olam haisa basar maimaros. Why did Hashem create the world with 10 statements? Even though the Mishnah tells us that he could have created in one statement. And then, do you remember what the Mishnah says? We just had this Pirkei Avos last Shabbos. You guys, you're supposed to read Pirkei Avos after Mincha, between Pesach and Shavuos. And then we do it all summer as well. Very important. But what does it say over there? We just said Hashem created the world in 10 statements. He could have created it in one. Levi answered this last time. Why didn't he create it in one? Because? Not Levi? No one knows. Come on. It says because he wanted to punish the wicked through a world that was created in 10 statements and give good reward to the tzaddikim with a world that was created in 10 statements. And I asked you last time, How does that make any sense? And nobody knew. Why in order to punish the wicked and give reward to the tzaddikim, you couldn't create the world in one statement, you had to create it in 10. We did ultimately answer it, but we're going to answer it again. And he says, Yudua habir bazeh. It's known, the explanation. It seems very puzzling, right? What does creating the world in 10 statements have to do with basically reward and punishment? But he says it's known. If you would have created all the world from one statement, haya olam batul b'tachlis, then what would that world look like? We already discussed what the world of one statement looks like. It's called the chomer harishon, right? The Ramban called it the original primordial soup, the original material, which means that nothing, like you just said, nothing had any individuality. It was all of creation as one, right? The scientists also kind of came up with such an idea. They looked into the world and they realized, oh, this world used to all be one little drop that we all live together in this little soup, right? And that's amazing that you can actually look into the creation and see that. It's like startlingly awesome. It's definitely a product of, when did the Big Bang Theory come out?
I want to see in the 50s.
We want to say in the Rebbe's generation.
Yeah, it was.
Right? Which is crazy, right? All of a sudden, like Chassidus came into the world, and now you can actually look at creation and like find its origin and realize you're all one. Chassidus, right? So the point being is that, and by the way, we'll give it up all the way back up to the 1800s. We're going to still claim that one, right? Because this notion of basically realizing the oneness of creation is a Hasidic idea. So in other words, if the creation would have, Hashem could have done it, and in fact, He did do it at a certain like stratosphere of reality. But at that level where He created the creation as one in one statement, the world would have been bittul b'tachlis. There would have been no sense of individuality. It would have been all creation, so to speak, would have been a state of total nullification to the oneness, not even being able to find their own state of individuality inside of that soup. Because even the world of Bria, in other words, in the Seder of Atzilus, Bria, Tzir, Nasiya, even in the world of Bria, which was created, right, with the statement of Bereshis in the sphere of Malchus, right? In other words, Malchus of Atzilus, we got through saying a moment ago, contains how many spheros inside of Malchus of Atzilus? Malchus of Atzilus. 10. And what is Malchus of Atzilus called? It's called the mouth of Hashem, right? Malchus Peh. Torah Shabbat Peh Karinanla, like we say in Pasach Eliyahu. Malchus is called the mouth. So those 10 spheros of Malchus are the spheros inside of Hashem's mouth that when He says them, what do they become? The Bria, the creation, and literally the world of Bria, right? What comes right after Malchus of Atzilus is the world of Bria. That's the reason why. Because right when you come out of Hashem's mouth, it begins creation. So he said, even if Hashem would have made, even the world of Bria, which is created from the statement of Malchus of Atzilus, Einu Yesh Mamish. That world itself is not really a true level of Yesh. In other words, when we talk about Atzilus is Elokus. There's no Yesh, there's no sense of other there yet. Because even the 10 statements of Hashem, which are in Malchus, they're still in His mouth. He didn't get them out of His mouth yet. So all is one. When He speaks the world into creation in Bria, right, it has to go through 3 iterations. The Bria, the Yetzira, and the Asiya. So if you think about what that actually means, the Bria precedes the Yetzira. What does Yetzira mean? Formation. So the world of Bria is very, very much like what we just said before about the primordial soup of this world, right? It's basically the creation in a state where it has not yet been formed. We're not even talking about the physical world yet. We're talking about the spiritual world of Bria. When the 10 statements of creation first come out of Hashem's mouth, what kind of a creation is that? Right? It's a creation which has not yet been formed. It hasn't even gone through a Yetzira, let alone a Siya, when it actually sort of takes life and starts walking around and being not just forms that are now individuated from each other, but like active life forms, right? So in the world of Bria, he's just trying to say that even in the world of Bria, which came out of the Maimer of Bereshis of the sphere of Malchus, it's not really a Yesh. It doesn't really have true existence. And he says, Ma kol shekain, how much more so, Im haise ishavos ma maimer echad de chochma o keser, And that's just Bria. What if we remember what we said the Maimer Echad was? What was the one statement? We said it could have been Malchus of Atzilus, it could have been Chochma of Atzilus, it could have been Keser of Atzilus, it could have been Ak, it could have been even the Aliyas Haratzon before the Tzimtzum. Remember all that we went through? All that was different iterations of what we called the Maimer Echad. If in Bria, the world was already not mamash a materialistic world, how much more so if he would have created the world from the Maimer Echad of the Aliyas Haratzon before the Tzimtzum? What would this world look like? Of course, it would have no creation would have any identity to its own. So we see that Hashem could have created the world in Maimer Echad. What would the world have looked like? No world really. It would have looked like all creations in a state of absolute bittul at one level or another. Sha'az hayu ha'olamos b'tachlis the bittul. The world would have been totally bittul. Umemela, after the brackets, lo haya shayach inyan ha-bechira. I have a feeling we're running out of time, so let's just. Oh no, 4 minutes we have. So he says that what would have therefore been the problem, and we did mention this before. I think Levi and I covered this ground in a couple classes ago. There would have been no ability for free choice. How can you make a free choice when you basically don't even find your own existence? You need, like you said a second ago, you need to have an I in order to say I want this or I want this. If there's no experience of I, so there now that Mishnah, you really need like a Hasidic goggles to understand the simple Mishnah. What does it mean? Hashem could have created the world in one statement, but he created it in 10 in order to give reward and punishment. Because in order to, basically 10 means you have a separate identity from everybody else, right? And therefore, once I'm a separate identity, I can choose yes or no, and therefore I can be punished or rewarded for that choice. So if the world wasn't created in 10 statements, there'd be no free choice. No one.
Doesn't this Mishnah explain why God needed to create the world in multiple statements, meaning anything more than one, not necessarily 10?
True, but once Hashem did create like numbers, he essentially created all those numbers at the same time. Like it says, for example, in the Zohar, it says, Sheishis Yamim Asa Hashem Es Hashemayim V'Za'aretz, right? Sheishis Yamim Asa Hashem, right? So it says, and the Zohar points out, it doesn't say B'Sheishis Yamim. It doesn't say in 6 days. It says 6 days he made, which means when Hashem made the world, he created L'chatchila 6 days, which is really 6 different midos, right? And of course, Shabbos. So in other words, when Hashem decided to create plurality for reasons unbeknownst to us, right? Because it says it's like one of the great wonders. Why is there 10? And there's not 9, there's not 11. You know, if all of a sudden Hashem is going to decide to make plurality, then it's kind of a random thing why we create one number of plurality or the other. So it's really something in the mind of God. But the reality is, when he went from 1, he went to 10. Right? And I get, maybe you could say he went up like one order of magnitude, that like basically 1 to 10 is a sort of like there's the automatic grouping of 9 in there. But even again, it's only automatic because he made it that way. It could have been that like the next order of magnitude was 11, you know what I'm saying? But and then all of our life would have been based around that. But it just is like that. He's 1 through 9. Okay. In any case, this is the reason Hashem made the world with 10 statements to bring out Bechira, free choice. And that's why he created the creation with 10 individuals. So that made each creation be an individual self. And suddenly it brought out this concept of free choice, which was really, again, what he wanted from his creation. He wanted us to make a dir b'tachtonim, but he wanted us to make the dir b'tachtonim. That it should come from us. If we didn't have free choice, it would have been a dir b'tachtonim by force. Whatever world would have been, it would have been a godly world because no one could do anything else about it. Once he made it in 10 statements, and all of a sudden he created individuality, he sort of thrust us out of a state of bittul. Now he could have his true design. Because first of all, we came from a state of oneness, so we can basically find our way back there. But we have to find our way back there from our own free choice, and therefore he has the tachtonim and the ability for the dir b'tachtonim. And therefore this whole thing was planned like this, you guys. All right. I don't feel like we're going to get to the end of this paragraph, so let's not push ourselves. And we're going to hold here. Shkoyach.